People coming up. Okay.
Ready? All right. What's up, Blueprint family? Thank you all for joining us tonight for another interesting topic. And the topic for the night is, why doesn't he just talk to me? So we're going to dive into what that means as far as communication in your relationship. Yeah, as always, this is a live show. So for all the viewers out there, if you all have any topics to discuss as well, um, any comments, suggestions or questions, as usual, please use the comment box, and we will love to get to those questions or comments for you or topics. So also too, if you want to remain anonymous, you can also go to our www.wifeconomics.com/submit a question page as well and submit a question there. So thank you all for joining us, and let's start with our show.
Yes, we're going to get into this question that sparked the topic for tonight. As always, Instagram, thank you for joining us. If you want to see the question that we're going to pull up on the screen, you're welcome to join us on YouTube. But as always, we'll keep you updated as we go along. So let's get on into this question. Subject: why doesn't my husband just talk to me? My husband and I have been married for a little over a year now. We rarely have any issues. Last night, my husband was playing video games, which I couldn't care less about, and I told him dinner would be ready in 15 minutes. If he's playing games when I'm looking, I tell him to not get into another game, Halo, so we can actually eat together. So last tonight, I guess she meant last night, the food was ready and he was getting into another game. I got upset because I just told him not to so we could spend a whole 20 minutes together to eat. If I'm cooking, I'd appreciate some actual time together to eat. He was in a game and refused to get out of it. This exact scenario happened a month ago and I was very upset. Lately, the only time he interacts with me is to ask me to make him snacks or get him a drink, which I usually don't mind because I know he works hard. After him doing what he did again tonight, I'm done cooking and he can get his own stuff. When I tried to talk to him later on about it, he had no idea why I was mad even after I told him. I then unloaded on him and ended up in tears because I feel like he takes me for granted. When I tried to talk to him again, he said absolutely nothing. When I asked him why he couldn't even answer me or why he had no input, he said he didn't have anything to say, and this upset me even more. He just shuts down. He does this every time something happens and I am upset. Just shuts down. Am I wrong?
Is she wrong? Is she wrong?
That's always an interesting question because when it comes down to a relationship, and honestly, when it comes down just to any argument that you're going to have in a relationship, it's never about who's right or wrong. To be honest, that's going to get you lost up into just a whole lot of hoopla because you're trying to just prove that. So we can just disregard that and more so talk about, I guess, the reasons to why he may be shutting down and some different approaches that you could take versus the approach that you have been taking, because it's not really, that's what's the issue per se, not so much her, but more so her approach to what's going on.
My thing is this: they've been married for 1 year, and this guy didn't just start gaming,
right?
And my whole thing is this: she's known this man before. That night,
Yeah.
they had an argument about gaming them a month ago, and where was it ever addressed about his gaming and how she wanted to have dinner with him? Right. They probably did discuss that, but you have to establish these things early in your relationship. and it's kind of hard to change certain habits. Simple communication, can definitely work here, of course. And we're going to get into the topics of that. But my whole thing about this was that you known this man since you all dated. Were any discussion there? No, you all were engaged. Any discussion there? Evidently not. So now you want to have the discussion once after you all are married.
It makes me wonder if it was actually, I'm sorry to cut you off, but if the discussion was more so her telling him and not so much a conversation or, where it's an actual discussion. And I say that in particular because she says, and I told him dinner would be ready in 15 minutes. And I tell him not to get into another game. Right. It's just her conversation, the way this is playing out. It's like, I told him.
Right. And then she has to understand, too, that he married her to be his wife, not his mother.
Right.
So the condescending tone of I told him.
Yeah.
She really needs to stop doing that.
That's probably why he's less receptive as to what's going on, because in a moment where your husband is playing a video game, he is focused on the video game. So if you just come in making demands and less getting his attention and actually having an active conversation where he's hearing you, then, that's where the issue is going to come in. And it can kind of be like what some people call selective hearing in a way where he's like not his really going to, his attention is split. So he's not really going to hear you anyway, and certainly probably not going to hear you if you just telling him, fussing at him,
Right.
Especially
talking at him.
Right. Especially if he is one to shut down. And we're going to get into really some reasons why your husband or wife may just shut down in general when it comes to a conversation, especially if they know that you're angry, because this is a big deal. Like, in particular, she mentions plenty of times, like, I'm upset. And that's totally fine to have your feelings, and it's great to acknowledge this. But how you react and getting your husband to understand this is super important to being able to, one, work towards a solution, but two, to actually being heard. Because if if you just coming off of him, he's not gonna really hear you either. So
right, but and then more importantly than that is the fact that you all get to a place where you all can negotiate,
right,
and compromise,
right.
Because that's all that needs to happen here, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Yeah. And that'll make it a lot easier. So let's go ahead and dive into that.
Yeah. Well, the first simple one to why your husband is probably shutting down is, like he told you, in more simple terms, he's afraid of your reaction. Just point blank. When he opens up to you, you spaz out on him. You said it. You admitted that, so just that aggressive, the angry behavior, especially if he loves you, it could hurt him. He doesn't want to, one, probably see you like that. And then two, he certainly doesn't want it directed towards him. So he's probably afraid of your reaction. And if he comes to you and you get angrier, he's probably thinking all in his head, second guessing, like, am I going to say the right thing? I don't want to make things worse. Like, I could just completely make it hard for him to even want to open up.
Yeah, I think it's number two. He's trying to avoid conflict. He must think that that if he shuts down, the conversation will end and he will be able to avoid the fight. Right. A lot of times guys do that because we don't want to argue with you. We don't win arguments, and it's not a competition.
Right.
So that's where we realize that, hey, if I just be quiet, this will blow over. And that's all that, and then real experienced husbands and wives know that, when there's a calm down in the argument, that also opens up an opportunity to compromise and negotiate and resolve the issue.
Right.
So that's where they are not experienced at, being the fact that they've been married for only 1 year.
Right. Right. And that takes time, and like you said, it really does. It comes with the experience. Another reason is, he may feel overwhelmed or even defensive. So if he may feel like, he's being attacked or criticized, if you just come, spewing blame or criticism, he may not know how to respond in a healthy way. This is certainly possible here when he says, he has no input. That's probably why, he doesn't know. That could be why. I mean, in particular, he may not know how to respond in a way that's, one, not going to make things worse, or even in a healthy way, especially if, it's not something he's used to doing.
Right. And to me that that shows the upper hand of maturity in the situation, as opposed to just spazzing out on somebody, calling, name calling, and
Yeah.
then tearing up afterwards.
Yeah.
It gets you nowhere. As you can see, this it doesn't help. So
Right.
arguing in a relationship doesn't get you anywhere at all.
Yeah. If it's not
Um,
done in a healthier way. Yeah.
yeah, but you
Then
don't even need to get to the point of arguing,
right.
because
Exactly.
it gets you nowhere. As you can see, she's still having issues with him not coming to dinner and wanting to play video games.
Right.
So that gets you absolutely nowhere.
Right. He also may be trying to process his own emotions, right? So maybe he is feeling a whole lot of different things at this moment, and he may not know himself how to verbalize these things. Or he may just need some time to calm down and chill out, and think about what he wants to say or, happen before he actually talks about it or does it. That's a good thing too. It's showing that, he's mindful, he's paying attention. So sometimes when a person shuts down, it's not maybe always a bad thing.
Yeah. Especially what she said too. They don't argue a lot,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they don't have this practice in their relationship.
Right. And you know what? That gives me a thought. She did mention, along with the aspect of not arguing a lot, that it did happen the prior month. So this could be around your menstrual cycle, like cyclical arguments time. Sometimes, things really don't bother you as much until it's that time of the month. And then around that time of the month, especially if it's something that you all have not addressed, maybe because he shuts down and then you don't know how to approach the conversation, which we'll get into later, but just not going through that process is going to repeat the pattern for the next month and the next month and the next month, because you're just going to find yourself victim to hormones and situations in that darn video game.
Yeah, because I mean, I did pick up on that, and
Yeah.
it seems as if that she's looking for something to argue about.
Right.
To me,
Right. Or possibly
because
that it just bothers her even more, during that time, or like the aspect of getting him stuff.
yeah, but also too, I told him that he needed to come eat or whatever the case may be. She's sounding very controlling, and if she wants to eat with him, I don't think that's a big issue. To be honest
No,
with you, it's
certainly
not,
not.
because
It's
this is the
not.
only time she's arguing and fussing with him, and it does seem like it's around her cycle. And the thing is that you can compromise this. You can sit with him while he's playing this game, and he can eat. I don't know, in the living room. Is it really that important?
Well, I mean, it just depends. Maybe it is. Sometimes if I don't know his work schedule, she didn't get too much into that, but maybe it is. If they're both, spending a lot of time apart and the only time that she feels like they do, maybe, like she's saying after work, he wants to just play video games. So for her in particular, maybe it is important, but it's just how you approach it to make it happen. It has to be, less
Yeah,
motherish and more wifely,
right.
like something he's going to want to do with you, not so much feel forced, like, forcing your kid to go to church. You kind of want them to want to do something, not,
Right. I mean, because they can compromise and do these things on the weekend, or
right.
whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. But anyways,
Yeah, that's certainly going to have to be a conversation for
right.
sure. And we'll get into that. But another reason to why he's possibly shutting down is he's not used to communicating his feelings. So this goes back to making sure you have those conversations about what your childhood looked like. What did you actually see healthy communication, or, how did your parents communicate, or, just in general, if you weren't raised by certain family members, whatever, you just need to be aware of the environment that you were brought up in and how this family processed emotions. Because if they processed emotions in a way that's much different than you and your family processed emotions, like, for example, if he's so used to not talking about his feelings, maybe his family never talked about feelings, maybe they did, or they were super open, or whatever, it just is going to depend on the family. But in general, you just have to know what that looked like for your spouse so that you can know what's their default communication style. Because you may not even know that this is just how they're going to communicate until you see, oh, their mama did this, or their daddy did this, or their brothers did this, or that's just how they handle conflict within the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Something, maybe he just doesn't know the healthy way to express himself. That's just one thing to take in consideration. That's honestly what it comes down to when you're talking about arguments and disagreements, really trying to see things from the other spouse's perspective. Although at that moment in time, you really want to get yourself known, and expressed. Yeah. Since you do notice that your husband is shutting down in a conversation, again, it's super important to try to understand why he's doing this. Because then once you understand why your husband's doing what he's doing, then you can start working towards the solution. So, of course, I did want to point this out one more time. Resolving any issue with your spouse is not about being right or wrong, period. It doesn't even matter. Truth be told, you're on the same team. So it's about the team. And it's really just about finding a solution that will work for both of you moving forward. You know that he enjoys his video games, so this isn't going to be too easy to pull him away. So it's really going to take his input. And that's what you're trying to get out of him, that input of how in the world can y'all resolve this?
Yeah. It's either, yeah. I just thought of something. Maybe she's hungry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different reasons to why I don't want to underestimate the whole aspect of it possibly being hormonal. We had this conversation, what was it, last week, about just hormones and, just in general, you're talking about premenstrual syndrome, PMSing, takes place at least at minimum 2 weeks before you're actually bleeding. And so you're talking about 3 weeks if you include the time that you are bleeding, probably 3 weeks worth of you being hormonal and your hormones going from ovulation to, actually being on your cycle. And this is important to pay attention to if you are tired during this time. If that's the reason why you're, stressed out when he asks you to make that snack or get that drink or something of that matter, it's maybe needing you to do some self-care for yourself, taking the time to have this conversation and being like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Let's figure this out and talk about, how to handle what's going on in a healthy way that doesn't always involve completely shutting down. It's okay sometimes to need that break, that chill out time. But in particular, let's get into how she can have this conversation, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So first, she can avoid bringing up the issue that caused your spouse to shut down.
Yeah.
Until you both are ready to talk about it, of course. So you want to make sure that cooler heads prevail, and then so that you all have a clear mind and want to discuss the issue, not each other, or talk about each other. So that's not the focus there.
Yeah. And in particular, it's important for both of you to have been in that mellow space, because if not, it can be emotionally triggering for both of y'all or one or the other. And one of y'all could still be hurt. One of y'all could still be upset. And just bringing up the issue right away when you're still not in that mellow space will just reignite those emotions all over again. And it will certainly make it more difficult to have a productive conversation.
Right.
And that's the goal.
And then, before all of that, make sure you process your feelings and your emotions. So you can definitely talk about how you all feel to each other. Yeah. But I would stay away from blaming each other. And we're going to talk about that next.
Yeah. But also, one more point, it could also make your spouse more defensive if you go into a situation or try to talk about the issue before your spouse is ready. So in particular, he could feel more attacked or even more blamed
because he's inflamed.
Just because. Yep. And it just won't help. It will really, although you may really want to, and I wanted to really point that out because she mentioned, I went away, I asked her, I brought it to him one time, and then I broke down in tears, and then I tried to talk to him again, right away. So it's like, where was the time to really process that? Like, you're really emotional, and that's okay. You want to acknowledge your feelings and acknowledge what you're going through and give yourself the time to process through. So that way you're not just staying on the same energetic vibration that caused the problem, because you're not going to be able to level up and get into that solution if you're still mellowing in the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you choose a time and place where you are both relaxed and focused on each other.
Yeah.
So you can start by talking about something positive or neutral. So some things, something else that's not related to the argument. So this can be anything from how your day was or a shared interest.
Yeah.
This can help you both to relax and feel more comfortable. And then also too, and then when you're ready, make sure you address that. Are you ready to talk about the issue that we just had? So that you give a clear indication that the conversation is about to start.
Yeah, and you'll be able to fill the room in a way and see if it was. Because if your spouse does come back and say, hey, I had a rough day today, and you may not have known about it, you clearly know that's not going to be the time to have that conversation. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of fill it out, fill your spouse out and see, hey, is this still a good time, by saying, hey, are you down to talk about this issue? And maybe if your spouse is really busy, maybe you might have to, schedule this time out through, if you're on the phone or text conversation and you're away from each other, say, hey, at this time, if we're free and we don't have anything planned, I'd love to talk about this, situation that we have on our hands. That way you both are prepared and you're able to really process things before you get there.
Yep. So if this is a good time, if you all schedule a good time to talk to each other, so use I statements.
Yeah.
So this will help your spouse understand how their behavior is affecting you. So for example, instead of saying you always shut down when we argue, you could say, I feel frustrated and hurt when you shut down during our arguments.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a clear understanding on how that person feels and how your actions affect them.
Yeah. In particular, just it won't come off like you did this, you doing this, and to send that person in defense mode.
Right.
Instead, it should hopefully make your spouse feel empathetic and be like, wow, I didn't mean to make you feel this way. Thank you for sharing that with me. And in particular, if he doesn't open up, just you opening up to him and modeling this for him should hopefully help him to soften up to wanting to open up to you as well.
Right. Yeah, because the intention has to be there to want to resolve the conflict.
Yeah.
And then we had a video about resolving conflict probably like months ago, but we talked about the intention of wanting to resolve, negotiate, compromise, and wanting to actually resolve the argument.
Yeah.
You can't win these arguments. These arguments are not for winning in your relationship. If someone wins in the relationship, someone's going to lose. And what that means is that they're not going to want to get along with you or try to cooperate with you. You've entered the realm of wanting to compete. Yeah. So now you entered a competition within your relationship, which ultimately leads to you all playing on different teams. And what does that mean? You both are separated. So you're trying to do everything that you can to keep each other together. So do not compete by arguing with each other.
Yeah.
Calm down, reconcile the issue, and then negotiate and resolve.
Yep.
So number 5, avoid blaming or criticizing. So this will only make your spouse feel defensive and less likely to open up.
Yeah.
Instead, focus on expressing your own feelings and needs.
Yep. And ask those open-ended questions. So this is going to help your spouse to start to open up since he does shut down. Allow him the opportunity to share his feelings and his thoughts with you in particular. So you can, for example, ask simple stuff like, what's going on? Or can you talk to me and tell me, how you're feeling? Can you verbalize, what you're going through in your mind, like what's happening at this moment? Just being as supportive in the conversation as possible, kind of like wanting to pull something out of somebody that, needs that tender love and care. You want to be nice about it and just patient and understanding. And that's certainly something we'll get into. But these questions don't make it so badgering, like, what the heck is wrong with you? Like, no, why you always do this? Like, don't do it that way. But, like, can you help me? Can you help me to understand what you're feeling? Can you help me to understand what your thoughts are, how you're thinking about me, how you're thinking about the situation? It's really what you're trying to get him to see, that you're trying to understand. So if you can say that would be really good too, I think.
Right. For the Instagram viewers, I wanted to take a side note here. If you all could also please like, share, and subscribe to our videos on YouTube, we would really appreciate it. If you know someone who needs to hear this message, both Instagram and YouTube viewers, please, by all means, please share this video or let them know about it, especially at the end of the video. But if you know somebody that needs to hear this message, please let them know that we are on live.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us.
Yep, and we thank you all for joining us as well.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and continue.
Okay.
So to add to what my wife was saying earlier, so make sure you listen without judgment. Yeah. So it's important to listen to your spouse without judgment or judging them. This means not interrupting, not trying to fix their problems, and not offering advice unless they ask for it. And that's something that men do. We like to fix things. And so we like to say, what's wrong, and then how can I help you, or how can I fix this? That's part of our thought process. And often at times the listening part, or the aspect, that the aspect of listening may be very hard for us, because all we're trying to do is figure out what's wrong and let's fix it.
Mhm.
So you have to understand that both of you all really need to express your emotions and your feelings on how you all feel first, and process those things. So
Yeah.
it's important to be a good listener.
Mhm.
So understand you don't have to get into the mode of fixer, Mr. Fixer, but you want to make sure that you listen to what the problem is, and not offer advice unless your spouse asks for it. Same thing for the wife as well.
Yeah. And in particular for this lady, it would be great if, while, of course, we always go into, when you're listening to really understand and not listening to respond. So just take in what he's saying, and versus trying to be defensive and say, well, I do this because of this, or, just come back with a response, and instead really listen to what he's saying and follow up with another question. This is going to be great, considering that he shuts down, because then you're going to keep him involved in the conversation, and not so much you, just loading off on him your frustrations. You're allowing him the opportunity to express himself and really see you be the great listener, because then, he's going to feel like it's worth it opening up.
Yeah. And then if your spouse starts to shut down, take a break and come back to the conversation later.
Yeah.
You want to go back and try to relax and wait for an opportunity to where you both are level-headed and ready to talk about what the issue is.
Yeah.
So stay calm and be patient and understanding.
Yeah.
So it may take time for your spouse to open up to you. So if you can, it can be frustrating when your spouse shuts down, but it's important to stay calm and patient. So getting angry or upset will only make things worse.
Yeah, certainly. And it can be, like you said, so frustrating, especially when you're ready to talk about it, right? And then you in particular want to really spend time with your husband and eat dinner with him. So I get it. It could really be a time where you're just wanting to talk about it. But yeah, you just got to know when it's not working. When the conversation isn't productive, it's no need to keep poking at it, because it's not going to get any better. It's better just to take a moment and do something that makes you feel good.
Right.
Yeah.
And be supportive. So let your spouse know that you're there for them and that you want to help. This
Yeah.
will help them feel safe and supported, which may more likely allow them to open up to you.
Yeah, in particular, that's going to be big for you if he is shutting down, and it seems like when he said he didn't have anything, else to say, it's seeming, he doesn't want to make things worse. He may feel like, afraid. He may feel like it's not safe, because things may get worse. You may blow up even more. You never know kind of where your spouse's head is at. But in particular, if he is shutting down, you want him to know that you are his safe space. And you want him to know that even though he's made you upset, let him know, I'm sorry, I'm upset at this moment. Let me take a break and back off so that I can better, go through this conversation with you. I'm sure he's going to be much more receptive to allowing this break if he shuts down himself. So just use that as an opportunity to say, hey, maybe we both need this.
Yep.
If you are, still, these are kind of some general tips for just if you are struggling with a spouse who does shut down and has a hard time communicating. It may be really helpful for you to get professional help, especially if this is new for you. You guys are a year in. This is prime time where you're still getting to know each other. You're still figuring out your, what do we call them? It's not your routine of de-escalating situations, but your stages, your steps that you take to de-escalate a situation.
Your method.
Yeah, your method, right, which is going to be different for your communication styles and how you work together on figuring out how you guys can de-escalate a situation and what are the most effective ways for you to, get your spouse to open up for you. Sometimes this is going to require a third party. So whether this is getting a therapist or maybe even scheduling a consultation with us or another life relationship coach or somebody that's married in particular, and is going to give you the advice and help you find solutions on helping your spouse to communicate more, because it's really going to be personal, and the more we know and understand about a situation, the more specific the solutions can be.
Mhm.
So certainly consider seeking professional help if this is something you still struggle with after some time.
Yep. And then also communicating with a spouse who shuts down can be challenging, but it's important to remember that they are not doing it to hurt you.
Yeah.
With patience and understanding, you can help them open up and communicate more effectively.
Yeah, they are not doing it to hurt you. And I know it can seem like, oh, you're not, you don't love me. You're not trying to talk to me. But that's not always the case. And in particular, with this husband of yours, I think he's trying to avoid hurting you and trying to avoid conflict with you because he loves you. So be patient and have that understanding with that. And before we go, because we kind of wrap this up pretty quick, though, I really want to talk about resentment, because the resentment is just oozing through this letter, with those. And resentment is a topic that needs to be addressed, because that emotion in particular will have a negative impact on your marriage if you are not able to process and learn to handle this resentment in a healthy way. It is a normal emotion. You're going to feel it. You're going to go through it, especially when you're in a relationship and it's a team and you're working together. Sometimes your spouse is going to do things that are going to make you feel a little angry or hurt or disappointment. But it's just important in this moment of time to not let that resentment lead to other problems.
Yep. It can make it difficult. So resentment can make your relationship difficult, and then also make it harder for you to communicate.
Yeah.
Openly and honestly with your spouse. So you may be afraid to bring up your feelings, or you may be so angry that you say things you don't mean.
Yeah. And that's probably what's going on here. So it's really important that you have this checked and look within yourself and saying, hey, I don't want to let my emotions really separate me and my husband, Yeah.
Resentment can create an emotional distance between you and your spouse. So you may start to feel like you can't talk about um, anything, and
Yeah.
you may start to withdraw from them emotionally.
Yeah.
Your spouse.
These are just some of the things that you have to be aware of when it comes to resentment. And really the reason why you have to check that resentment, so it doesn't affect your relationship, because in the worst cases, resentment will lead to physical distance. So my husband hit on the emotional distance. It gets real bad. Y'all gonna start sleeping in separate beds or doing things like not even communicating and talking to each other, because that resentment has just, mustered and oozed all through the house. So certainly be sure to learn to process resentment in a helpful way and in a healthy way. I'm sorry, but here are some tips that we think could be helpful in
Right.
doing this and processing this resentment. So then that way, when you're going to have this conversation with your husband, you're doing so in a way that is as a centered. I call it, within our Wifeconomics course, you're finding your center. And so that then you're able to, process and communicate in a way that's healthy. So first, of course, don't bottle up your feelings. Make sure that you're expressing things in a healthy way. And that may mean, talking to, like we talked about, a third party, or it could be talking to your friend or a family member, or, just somebody close to you who you trust, who you can really vent to. But please, disclaimer with that, make sure this person is happily married. Don't allow this to be an opportunity for an outside source to come and give you some bad advice.
Yeah. So no single friends.
Yeah, avoid that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
They're
seriously.
single for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, that can seem cliche, but it really makes a world of a difference. We talk about that all the time. Even when it comes to your therapist, you want to make sure that this person is married, because their mindset is going to be totally different than someone who's scorned, divorced, single,
Biased.
Yeah, it's going to be different. It's two totally different places. So yeah.
Practice forgiveness. So forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to forget what happened. Of course not. But it does mean that you let go of your anger and resentment. Forgiveness can help you to move on and heal. And when we say resentment, I'm also thinking of competition. So competing in your relationship.
Yeah, the tit for tat.
Right.
Yeah, or the keeping score just in general of, oh, I did this, well, you need to do this. Or
Right.
I think I almost forgot about that. But then she said, I'm not gonna do this. He can get his own food, or what she said, something about, oh yeah, so he did it again, and I'm done cooking, and he can get the rest of his own stuff.
Right.
There it goes, like, and it's okay. This is not a judgment moment. This is a moment of awareness. Awareness is super important, so that then you can see, wow, this is what it
I
is.
mean,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
gonna
that's
work
typical.
towards
That's
this.
typical
Yeah,
in a relationship.
it is. It
That's
is.
that's what the competition in the relationship looks like. And that's the stuff that I said that we need to avoid here. Because
Yeah.
it can only snowball. That stuff snowballs in relationships, and especially if you all don't know how to recognize it. So that's
Yeah.
what you want to avoid when you come into conflict with your spouse, because all that does is make things worse. Now, if the husband
Hmm.
didn't shut down, I'm pretty sure it will be a lot worse. He probably let her have it and rip her a new one, if you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
You would hope not, but yeah,
Right. But that,
certainly.
I mean, it
Yeah,
happens all the time.
it
And then
does.
that's how things get violent and things get bad. Then ultimately leads up to divorce. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to happen that way. It really doesn't.
No, yeah. So I think forgiveness is by far the number one thing that you're going to have to do all the time in a marriage. So get used to that and what that feels like, to just take it in, take that breath, and be like, all right, I'm upset, but I'm gonna let go of it. I'm not gonna forget. It's okay. You can use this as a reference moment,
A
so that
learning
we can, yep,
opportunity.
so we can talk about how we're gonna do things different or figure things out. Whatever, however you want to look at that problem that you're having. But in particular, forgiveness is essential to moving on. So please get used to doing that. Be open to doing that. Don't be afraid of doing that. And yeah, focus on the positive. That's pretty much our next point when it comes to this whole resentment part, because it's easy to get caught up in the negative, especially when you're feeling resentment, and you're just upset with your spouse. But it's super important to focus on those positive aspects of your relationship as well.
Right. And then you have to focus on what you love about your spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and then what do you appreciate about them? What kept you all
Yeah.
together? Why are you all married?
Yeah, that's super important, because it's, and those moments in particular, how you think, your thoughts that you're having about your spouse is really going to guide your direction of what you're going to do next, how you're going to feel. So if you can get used to really trying to think better thoughts about your spouse, and even when you're so upset with them, I'm not saying to just let them do whatever, but allow yourself the moment of being like, oh, I love this man. He's getting on my nerves right now, but I love him. He is such a good man. Whatever you need to kind of talk yourself down the ledge, so that then you're able to process things, forgive, and move on. Because, men, women, we're not perfect. We make mistakes, and we need that grace, especially within young marriages. You got to have that grace with each other. That's the only way you're going to go through years and years and years and years and years, is grace, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling resentful, when you're feeling like competing into an argument, it's important to take care of yourself. So this means eating healthy, getting enough sleep and exercise,
Yeah.
and taking care of yourself will help you feel better physically and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
But to wrap this all up, remember, before you get into a situation where you're arguing and competing to trying to win the argument, remember to take a deep breath, cool down, calm down, relax, ask each other, are you ready to resolve this?
Yeah.
When you go into conflict resolution, remember to reconcile the issue, talk about what the issue is, negotiate, compromise, and then resolve.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do when it comes to these situations. Once you get past talking about your feelings, remember to reconcile, negotiate, and then resolve the issue. And what that means is that you both plan and think about a solution on how to prevent this from happening again.
Yeah.
So in this lady's situation, what her and her husband can do is, go on dates on the weekend, or when it's time for him to eat, stop playing the video game, and he has to agree to that.
Yeah. I need
That
that.
this is just so small. Or either she could have just, spend time with him. He needs to eat during the video game or what have you, or whatnot. So there may be some deeper things dealing with this, but I think that if she follows that method, then they'll be better, the third time around dealing with this.
Yeah, in particular, I was trying to figure out where, here, I was looking right at it. She said this exact scenario happened last month and I was very upset. In particular, I wanted to, when my husband had mentioned to taking care of yourself, as a woman, I could be wrong, but just as a woman, when things come cyclical, it's common for them to fall around the time where you may be PMSing or on your cycle. Please recognize this if this is the case and take care of yourself. Do those things. If you need those breaks, if you need to slow down, maybe y'all do need to pick up food or something like that versus you cooking that night. Whatever it is, listen to yourself and really pay attention to, hey, I'm not feeling my usual self. I'm a little cranky. Let him know these things so that he can be aware. Your husband is not a mind reader. I think this whole ESP thing only comes from us women. We get that. I think God blessed us with that because we have babies and, you can connect through thoughts with our kids. I don't know. But men, they aren't really like that. To be completely honest, they aren't. And sometimes, well, most of the time, you have to tell your man that, I'm feeling, so I'm not feeling my best. I'm a little cranky today. I'm a little hormonal today. I don't know. However, it really comes off to you and how you feel. Just make sure that you're doing those things and expressing what it is that needs to be done so that you physically are all together and mentally all together before you all try to come together, because that's important. You really do have to be whole within yourself as a person.
Yeah. Well, that's our topic. That's the end of the topic for the night. Anybody have any questions, suggestions, any topics that they wanted us to cover, or maybe we can cover next time?
Check onto YouTube. Thank you. No YouTube comments or anything or questions. Let's see. Instagram. We're pulling up on our screen. Full House Instagram. Thank you for joining us. Any questions before we head on out? This was a pretty good topic. I think it's pretty common, within relationships in general. Just knowing, especially when it comes to, men and women and figuring out your communication styles. Sometimes women, we get our thoughts and process our feelings and stuff out by talking. And men, y'all more so are internal, I think, with a lot of things. Sometimes you don't want to speak before, you know what you say, or at least the well-calculated man will do, have that thought first,
I mean, this depends on the person. I mean, I don't think it's always just men or women that act that way. It could be vice versa. I mean,
that's true. That's what you want to process it. Yeah.
Right. But it's just the way that there's a respectful way to talk to people. And a lot of times that goes out of the window when it comes to relationships. So just be mindful that, you need to have that same level of respect that you talk to your spouse with, the same level of respect you talk to your boss at home. I mean, at work. Yeah. To be honest with you. And a lot of people just don't, are not mindful of that, especially if you have children. You want to make sure that they see a great example of you all conflict resolving. Mm-hmm. That's very important so that they can learn those characteristics and those, those habits as well as far as communication goes. Yeah. So a lot of things to be mindful when you're in a relationship. It is a job of its own, so you want to make sure that you do the best job you can as far as your relationship goes and help to improve it, because it's a marathon, not a race. Yeah. So you all have to pace yourselves and take care of yourselves in your relationship and take care of each other as well.
And be forgiving to even yourself if you do happen to come off a little angry sometimes, or, forgive yourself too, because you're learning and you're growing.
Work on it, though.
Mm-hmm. Yes, work on it. Certainly. Yeah.
Even during your cycle months,
yeah.
Women work on your mood swings. Work on letting your spouse know that, hey, I'm having mood swings and I can't help it. Yeah. Or whatever the case may be. It really helps. It really does help the husband to understand. And also in the case of an argument when you just couldn't hold yourself together, he understands that, this is something that you're going through. I don't have to take this personally.
Right. And please, if you feel like you need a little more help than just what we're giving you, reach out to a therapist or us or, any other consultations you can get, coaching. Just don't be afraid to really get the help that you need, whether it's even with your, cycle or whatever. any type of professional help, really do the things to reach out and get that help. Don't be afraid of that, because that can really hold you back if you don't, go after that help that you need. And that's okay. I think a lot of times with us growing up in single parent households, majority of America in particular, growing up in single parent house homes, it's super important that you recognize when you don't know what to do, and then be okay with getting that help, because it's out here. There are genuinely people that want to help, us included. So be open to that.
Yep. If there are no questions, no topics, suggestions for next time, we thank you all, Blueprint family, for coming out and
On
joining our show.
Yep,
Monday night,
y'all.
just the start of the week. Yeah, we hope you all had a good weekend last weekend as well.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, you all have a good night.
See ya
Peace.
tomorrow.
You made this face. You went like this.